Here's the field lining up now for race 1, round 7. We just had a couple of sprinkles of rain in the break, but it looks as though we've got a dry track at the moment. And here's the order. Scaife, 0.06 back to Johnson. Holden versus Ford. Then Morris and Kelly, row 2. Row 3, Marcus Ambrose and Mark Larkham. And row 4, Russell Ingall and Craig Lowndes.
Jason Bright and Greg Murphy round out the top 10. Larry Perkins and Paul Radish as a result of an incident in practice. He got bumped right down the grid. Garth Tander and Cameron McConville up there in 14th. Good job in the Optus Commodore. Stephen Richards and David Bernard in 16.
Then Stephen Ellery and John Bow, and John frustrated with his run yesterday. Rodney Forbes, 19th. Glenn Seton, a misfire in qualifying, put him back in 20th. Brad Jones, Cam McLean, Jason Bargwana and Tony Longhurst.
Paul Wheel and Jason Richards doing a good job in the Team Kiwi car inside the top 30. Dean Canto and Anthony Trapp. Dougal McDougall and Paul Romano, the young lion, out of 30. Thomas Mazira and Matthew White rejoins the Shell Circus in car 76.
Well, the first corner here is going to be fun and games, Neil, isn't it? It's so close. Cannot believe how close the times are.
On board with Russell Ingall, one of 6 cars carrying cameras for us today, including Shell Helix camera for Paul Radisic. Difficult day yesterday in qualifying. We've got some foot cam operating there as we go on board now with Craig Lowndes. Multiple angles in the Lowndes Mobile car 00 for Gibson Motorsport. Mr. Gear coming onto the front straight in qualifying, cost him dearly. Ditto for Greg Murphy. This is Marcus Ambrose, Stone Brothers Racing Pertec Falcon. 2 views, one out through the screen, another looking at Marcus in the office. And he'll be a factor here today as well.
Very critical start. This is probably going to be the most critical start of one of the Shell rounds we've seen so far, because whoever wins that run into the first turn, we've seen it at Calder so many times in a 20-minute sprint, pretty much you get locked in position there, particularly if you've got clean air in front. You can just open up a bit of a gap and protect. So this start between the Shell 17 Ford and the Holden Racing Team Commodore can be very crucial to today's result.
Yeah, we've got to offer our congratulations to Mr. and Mrs. Osler. Mark Osler tied the knot with Tanya. When was it? Wednesday?
Wednesday.
Yes, which was really nice. Long-suffering Tanya.
He did it by stealth.
Yeah.
Well, they say the first 40 years are the hardest, so all right.
There's an idea of the entire field, 32 cars. Remember, just a few moments ago in our opening, we're explaining the distance between cars. How would you like to be back in 15th or 20th or something at the moment? You can be very competitive, but it's a tough task from back there on a track noted to be difficult to pass on. Here they go. Race 1, round 7 away. Johnson makes an excellent start. And Scaife gets swamped a little. Morris goes with them. Todd Kelly up on the outside. Everybody heads to the white line to protect. Some people will try to go wide, but it's very slippery out there.
Look at the brakes there.
Scaife locks the rears momentarily. He gives Johnson a little hit. In fact, it's enough to get up the inside.
How about that?
Murphy
round.
Wow.
Lowndes is in the grass.
That'll be interesting.
Larkham's back there as well.
Stewards will be watching that replay. Scaife buried the front of the Holden Racing Team Commodore in the back of the Shell Ford, bumped him offline, and that was enough to grab his position.
Lowndes is back behind Jones, and it looks like Murphy's got a problem. Trying to gather it up and get speed again. Has he got another drama going there? Here they are at the end of back straight. Turn 6, Scaife, Johnson, Morris, Ambrose, a winner in all that brawling. Then Ingall, Stephen Richards on the outside of Larry Perkins. Difficult spot to be at the end of the back straight.
I reckon Scaife would be lucky if he gets away with that.
Well, he gave him a little nudge in the braking area. It started when he locked the rear brakes, which then probably meant he carried a bit more speed than he wanted to into the first part of the turn. Then it looked like he gave him another little belting, and that was enough for Stephen on cold tyres to not make the apex, opened a gap, and Scaife went through.
So the order at the moment, Scaife, Johnson, Paul Morris, great start. Marcus Ambrose breathing all over the back of the Big Kev Commodore. And it's Russell Ingall, Jason Bright, Paul Radisic in 7th. Great start from the Rat. David Bernard in 8th. Tanner in 9th. McConville, another good start. He's in 10th.
It'd be interesting to see if the Big Kev Commodore goes backwards the way it did in Perth. They qualified really quickly and then went backwards in the race.
We made the point earlier about the way in which the pack scatters in the opening corners. Look at the margins between various people after the first few corners in the first lap. Here's where it starts with the lock-up at the rears, and then it sort of happens again where it actually looks like Junior gets a little bit crossed up. Scaife gives him another tap, he goes wide. But that's Larkham into the back of Murphy, which sends Lowndes out into the gravel. That's going to make it very difficult for him to get back on and be competitive from out there. Here's the onboard. This is Craig Lowndes. right there.
That's Ingle, is it?
It's Murphy up on the outside. And pretty shortly, a bit of chaos unfolds here because I think Larkham touches the back. Oh, yes, he does. Bang.
Yeah,
Does he
he
give
does,
him
yeah.
more than a touch, actually? It's a big wallop, and that just carts Lowndes out into the grass.
Well, Todd Kelly, what a disappointing start it has been for him after putting in the fastest qualifying prior to the top 10 shootout. He's rolled a rear tyre off the rim after contact with Marcus Ambrose. We knew that would be the consequence of racing around Calder Park.
So back toward the main straight once again. Scaife, Johnson, Morris, Ambrose, those positions remaining fairly static. Here's Bright breathing down the neck of the Castrol car, and Paul Radisich starting out at 12th. He's fought his way up to 7th. Great start by the Rat.
Stephen Johnson's quickest so far, only 56.6.
56.67, the first flying lap for Stephen Johnson. Fastest time yesterday in qualifying was a 56.2. That's pretty quick times in the early laps of this race. Kevin McConville in there, the Optus Commodore. Continuing improvement aboard the car prepared by Wally Story. Sydney's only level 1 V8 supercar team, making continual progress as the season progresses.
Last Thursday, Mark was out here with the Holden racing team, and they were testing. He did a simulated race run and maintained good pace.
Here's a replay of the start, courtesy of Shell Helix. We're on board with Greg Murphy. Now watch Lowndes moving across there to try and find some tactical advantage. He gets boxed in. And look at Radisich, a brilliant start in the Shell Ford, sneaking along the inside of the Kmart car. Murphy goes really deep under brakes, picks up 2 or 3, but then unfortunately he's on the receiving end of this shuffle across from Larkham. Bang!
Whoa!
And he's taken out of the picture.
Greg made enormous ground under brakes on the outside at turn 1, which is a trick you can get away with here, but it puts you in a very vulnerable spot if anything goes wrong, and it did. Now another incident here shows Kelly, I think his teammate, yeah, whoa, no, it's Merv.
It's Murphy.
Big aggravation there with Romano. And that's on the approach run to the final corner. And I understand that Mark Scaife has had a stop-go penalty. Now we'll have to have that confirmed. Grant, you got something?
I can confirm that one, Neil. What he's done is in relation to a driving incident in turn 1. He'll have to come in for a stop-go penalty shortly. John Bow is also out of the race with injured problems.
Well, you can hear the Ford fans giving Mark Scaife a big raspberry. And you can see the dent on the front of the car there. The contact with the Shell Ford at turn 1. Obviously, the stewards have gone back and run through the tape several times and decided he has to get a stop-go penalty. And you can see what Mark Scaife's opinion is of that on the Victoria Bitter in-car camera.
You can hear the engine just popping along there with low throttle percentage and the button pushed.
He's not very happy about it.
He's doing 40 Ks down the pit lane and just telling the odd story along the way.
He will be absolutely steamed. This is championship-changing stuff. Gets the paddle pop to get back into the action. And there goes Paul Romano, who we saw spin to the back of the field. So Scaife has gone right to the rear. Enormous amount of work to do for the Shell champion.
Yeah, insurmountable from the back there after 6 laps, no way.
I've seen him make some amazing charges through the field. He will make ground for sure, but he's not going to be a factor, certainly not in this race. Another 2 to come after this. So the order at the moment is Johnson, then Morris, Ambrose, Ingle, Bright, Radisich, Bernard. You can see them on the front straight. Tander, who's recovered well from some pretty ordinary pace in the early practice, but he managed to dial the car in throughout.
One thing I've learned from watching these Shell rounds is you never write Mark Scaife off. Guarantee you by the 3rd race today, he'll be fighting his way back into contention. They're an amazing team. They've certainly got the speed around this track. And I'm sure it's not over for Mark Scaife, but he's got a lot of work to do. They go back for the midfield battle. Johnson now 1.2 seconds the gap over Paul Morris, and 56.83 for the Shell Ford.
You'll often find these battles for what we describe really as minor placings these days are unbelievably intense with a lot of cars. You work as hard or harder here than you do when you're in front of the field when your car's working a little bit better. And this one involves McConville, Larry's mixed in there, Stephen Richards, Steve Ellery's bought into it as well.
This one's fallen into Stephen Richards. Where is he in the field there? He had some problems in qualifying. That sort of put him back through the field.
He's 11th in this overall battle at the moment. His teammate Glenn Seton is back in 17th, and Glenn had a problem yesterday. They found after qualifying that there was a misfire, and they naturally went to computer-related things to try and find the answer. But it turned out some chafing on a plug lead was shorting out and causing the drama, so frustration for FTR. Seton, who traditionally has pretty good pace here at Calder, has to fight from a long way back today.
The trouble is, with all the modern technology, the last place you look for it is the obvious, isn't it?
On board with Russell Ingall. He's in 4th position, right up behind Marcus Ambrose. Another strong qualifying performance in the Pertec Ford. Now finds himself well in the thick of the battle. Ingall now trying to find a way past. This is what happens so often in a sprint race at Calder. Very little opportunity for brake or tyre degradation. When the cars get into this pattern, they really tend to hold it for quite a while.
Jeff Gretsch, what do you make on that decision on Mark Scape's stop-go penalty?
Well, I don't know, to be honest. Look, we really only hear the management channel that he received a stop-go. From what I don't know, everyone watching the monitors up this end of pit lane believes there was no infringement, but really that's about all you can comment. You know, I can't comment until after the race, and we'll certainly go and see the stewards on it and see why they've made that decision.
Severely affected your weekend?
Oh, it's ruined the day. It's really ruined the day. But look, you know, that's about all we can do, and just keep pressing on.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks.
Definitely hasn't ruined the day for Stephen Johnson. It always amazes me, the Stone Brothers cars, how much fuel they put through. You see it's like following a diesel truck. You see a big plume of black smoke coming out the left-hand side of Marcus's car.
That car is very distinctive in its sound too.
Yeah,
when you're standing next to it.
totally different, isn't it?
It's a beautiful sound.
Stephen Johnson's just letting the time slip out. He's punching out a few times in the high 56. He's back to a 57.29 now. 1.8 seconds the gap over Paul Morris. So
locked up there.
Locked the fronts very late in the stop.
he's looking pretty comfortable in the lead now. 1.8 seconds for Stephen Johnson, the lead. Paul Morris, though, car performing very well. We saw it fade very quickly in the opening laps at Barbagallo. But obviously, Paul Sepranich and the team there are getting a real handle on what it takes to make this Commodore chassis work.
You'd have to say that car of Marcus's looks over-rich now, doesn't it? It's really that amount of fuel coming out.
Yeah, but hard to really pick from this distance without knowing all the numbers what's going on. But certainly they've never suffered in a straight line. On board with Paul Radish. Yesterday, really the victim of a bizarre incident when Dean Canto had a throttle stick at the bottom of the straight in qualifying. Just some words of encouragement there to Paul from the crew. You're doing a nice job, stick with it. He was looking good to be in the top 10, but he got KO'd just about here. It was where Canto lost control. Paul had turned in and he got walloped about there. And a lot of damage to the front right-hand corner, and that put him out of business.
So the order, Stephen Johnson, he's still building that lead. 2.3 seconds the gap is now. 57.1 versus Morris at 57.6. So Junior just hovering around the low 57 bracket. Paul Morris getting some good consistency out of that car.
That kink there, Neil, is that flat?
It is if the car's right, but if the car's not exactly right, sometimes you just need a little confidence lift to be sure you won't go into orbit.
Now, isn't this a classic example of what we've said about the 20-minute sprint format, Neil? Once these cars have settled into the groove, this is pretty much where they stay. Well, this is looking at Paul Radisic's feet.
Let's just have a listen too, because I think this is terrific to watch and listen to the whole show. Watch this. Clutch shift.
Look at that, 6th gear. He didn't even lift on the throttle. Just checks the brakes to make sure he's got a hard pedal. And look at this. Just an indication of how much you steer a car with the pedals.
Yeah, coming into turn 2 now. When they go over the hump, listen to the wheel spin here where he grabs short shift second to third. Third gear, the things just leap and dance over the top of the hill. So you see flat there, Barry through 4-5, the chicane, but for the gear change. Confidence just to ensure that pedal pressure's high. They do get a little bit of pad knockoff sometimes, and that's why Paul's just dabbing the brake pedal to make sure it's there. He needs it. 240 km/h stop at the end of the back straight.
You've never seen inside a footwell of a V8 supercar. You can just see the massive amount of triangulation that goes into stiffening up these cars when they're built. That's a big piece of roll bar going down to the front right corner there. So fantastic shots from the footbox of the Shell 18 Ford, but his teammate is doing a sterling job out front now. 3 seconds the lead. 57.4 for Johnson to 57.6 for Morris. So Johnson well in control at the moment. Look at that big gap back to second.
He's getting shoved wide to the outside. And these guys, believe it or not, are battling for 17, 18, 19 and 20. Doesn't sound like the sort of thing you jump up and down about, does it?
It just goes to show how competitive the V8 supercar pack is, particularly in Calder, where you've got 25 cars or whatever it is covered by 1 second.
And then you look at the Formula 1 grid and you've got how many cars covered by 6 seconds?
A couple of weeks between them.
Incredibly competitive. This nature of this circuit just tends to bunch up the field so tightly. Everyone's climbing all over each other.
You won't believe the decision-making going on inside Mark Scaife's car. Believe it or not, the team is considering pulling Mark in and just parking the car to conserve his tyres now that this race is all but shot, and also their day too. But also Team Kiwi, what a horrible start to race 1 as well. Broken drive shaft on the start line. These guys are finding it incredibly tough in this super competitive Shell Championship Series.
What a shame for the Kiwis, because he qualified really well, didn't he?
Well, Longhurst makes a mistake there, and that's an invitation for Murphy to come up the inside. He's going to get a better run and pass him now as they make me run down the front straight. Greg had much better pace in qualifying. It is a shame for Team Kiwi. I saw that car parked off to the side of the start line. There it is up in the background, the black car on the left-hand side of the screen. Hard to imagine why Jeff and Mark would park it, because points are awarded throughout the field, even for those that don't finish. But for every place he makes, there are more points to grab.
Oh, JB.
No, it's Paul Wheel.
Paul Wheel, sorry.
This is at the end of the back straight. This is all the replay of the stuff that was happening when we came back from the break, and they were climbing all over each other, these guys. Hello, Paul.
Look at this, it gets even more physical. Murphy trying to fight his way through this gaggle of cars, fighting for a place inside the top 20. This man's got it shot to bits at the moment. 3.6 seconds now. And Paul Morris has just matched him on lap speed that time around, a 57.83 for Junior and a 57.83 for Paul Morris. So the chassis of the big curved car obviously working particularly well. Good power down, the brakes are obviously working well, and he's holding his position in a very, very competitive pack. It's been a most impressive season so far for the Big Kev team. Keep in mind they debut their first in-house built VX Commodore at Oran Park in a couple of weeks' time, so looks like they're on an upward spiral.
They seemed to come across something at Barbagallo, didn't they? And everything was a rocket in qualifying, but unfortunately didn't transfer into the race. But here, I mean, he's right on it.
Just to go back to that point I made earlier, dug out the rule book, and points are allocated all the way down to 32nd, regardless of whether you finish. So in 32nd, you get 2 points. Now, Mark Scaife at the moment is in 27th place, and he's behind Matthew White. Like basically every place he makes is another couple of points. Now I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, Mark ended up finishing second in the championship. I think it was in '99, just 1 point proud of Glenn Seton. So you never, every point is vital. So I can't imagine that would be a good strategy if they did that, because you just never know. Unless he's a long, long way behind. I need to look at the margins between them. But I would have expected that Mark would have had very good pace.
Maybe you get a bit complacent if you're 300 odd points in the lead or whatever it is.
I guess that's a possibility, but it's there. Obviously, statisticians are crunching numbers at the moment, as Grant said before.
I can't imagine you'd forego 1 point, let alone 2 or 3 possibly.
I'd say it's probably a little bit more emotion than practical at the moment. They're just obviously unhappy.
Hear the message to Paul there. Only got a few laps to go. Keep it straight. I don't think that's a message that Paul's got to take too much notice of. 3 laps remaining. Look at the pressure he's applying to Jason Bright here in the closing laps of Heat 1. He's all over the Holden Racing Team Commodore. Just saw him giving a big tap on the right rear corner coming onto the main straight that time around, filling up his mirrors. One little slip from Bright. Radicic will be up to 5th. Have a look at this.
Into the back straight. Turn 6. Paul uses a lot more of the curbing than Jason, and that gives him a run as they get to 7, and he gives him a little tap here, I think, as they just go up over the strip. And then this bumpy little run to turn 8, they use the inside ripple strip just to launch the car. And Paul gets in a bit quicker, he's got better turn-in speed, and then whack right at the apex.
Oh dear.
A little love bite to let him know he's there, and I'm sure Jason knows he's there.
Noted for his forceful driving, Radicic. He's done a fantastic job fighting his way up from 12th into 6th. He could well be in contention toward the end of this day. 1 lap remaining for race leader Stephen Johnson. 3.4 seconds, so the gap is stabilised. Bright's way offline. He actually looked like he's been struggling coming under brakes at that final turn for the last few laps. The car hasn't looked happy at all.
Yeah, Radish couldn't have asked for more, could he, really, there?
It's lovely when the door opens up with an invitation like that.
Just in the last couple of laps, Jason coming down hard under brakes. You can see the car wobbling around over the bumps. It didn't look that comfortable. And obviously that time was just a little bit too hot. Radish took advantage. So Radish up to 5th from 12th. That's a great drive. Showing the forcefulness he displayed when he blitzed the field at Barbagallo. This time he's a little bit further back in the pack, but he's got rid of most of his adversaries so far. A bit further back in the pack, Cameron McConville fighting here with Bargwanna, Lowndes. There's a few quality cars in there. Oh, look at Stephen Richards leaning hard on Tander. Bargwanna's done a great job too, climbing his way up from the 20s.
24th he was to 12th, and that's an extraordinary run. Stephen Richards goes up the inside, however. Look at this.
Whoa! Meeting the sandwich. Bargwanna manages to survive that one. Lowndes breathing down the back of him. Lowndes is in 13th place, so this is a battle just outside the top 10. Just an indication of how close and competitive the racing is here at Calder. If you're even 1/10 off, it really can cost you a lot of time on the grid. But this man, no problems here. 3.6 seconds the gap. He's blitzed him.
Good work, mate. Good work.
It was good work. Tremendous performance from Stephen Johnson. Dick Johnson, owner and manager, very happy with that performance. And boy, he's seen some strength from that team in the last few weekends and the last few outings. So full points there to Johnson from Morris, then Ambrose, Ingle, Radish. Great run from him in 5th. That was an extraordinary performance. Argument for the minors. It's McConville in 11th, then Bargwanna, Lowndes, Perkins, Forbes, Larkham, Murphy, Brad Jones, Glenn Seton 19, Tony Longhurst 20.
Well, that's exactly the situation that Stephen Johnson wanted. He sort of said that they really need to go out and win this round if he's going to stay in contention with Mark Skaife for the championship. But I don't think he could have asked for anything better than that. Skaife disappearing to the back of the field as a result of a stop-go penalty. So Johnson really has to try and capitalise here.
He finished 25th, incidentally, did Mark. So he stayed out there and he gained points, which I think was probably a wise decision with the benefit of 2020 hindsight.
Great run for Morris. Really good.
Very, very impressive, isn't it? This level of competition and how close the field is here at Calder. That's an outstanding effort by the Big Kev racers. 3.7 seconds the gap at the end. Marcus Ambrose, good effort that to come 3rd. It was Ingle, Radish, Bright, Bernard and Stephen Ellery in 8th.
Stephen Richards from Garth Tander, that was an excellent battle. Then McConville, Bargwanna, Lowndes, Perkins, Forbes and Larkham.
Greg Murphy survived for 17th. Brad Jones, Glenn Seton and Tony Longhurst, McLean, Paul Wheel, Anthony Tratt and Dougal McDougall in 24th.
Well, race 1 was a great result for Stephen Johnson for another race win. It dealt a cruel blow to Mark Skaife. Stop-go penalty for alleged contact with Stephen Johnson. Is that how you see it?
Oh, absolutely not, Grant. I mean, it was just Stephen ran wide by himself. I ended up at the inside of him. There's hardly a mark on the car. I mean, compared to other first corner incidents, it's a walk in the park. We'll certainly be going and having a chat to the boys about that one. That's an absolute joke.
That's ruined your race 1 and effectively, or possibly the remainder of your day. You elected to stay out, though you did debate to come in and save the tyres.
Well, I certainly did. I mean, you know, the reality of that is you go and do 20 laps running around last and all it does is knock the tyres around. So I basically cruise to make sure the tyres aren't too hurt. But, I mean, those sorts of things, those judgments in race 1, I mean, this is a pretty professional game we're in right now, and I don't think that was that professional. I've got to give you the tip.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
An aggrieved Mark Skaife. Let's have a look at the replay. You see that Mark locks up the rears on the approach to 1. The back of the car gets a bit out of shape. Did he hit Stephen once or twice? There's certainly contact there, and that sends Junior wide of the line. Now, the stewards are saying, and you can see the chaos behind this, that Mark did bump him. That meant that the pass was illegal. They feel that Mark had the opportunity to reverse that decision a lap or 2 later. There's going to be more discussion about that one. Let's look at the Shell Helix race score. Movers and shakers. Well, Paul Radish up from 12th to 5th. Jason Bargwanna, great run from 23 to 12. Excellent performance. Greg Murphy from 10 down to 17, and Mark Skaife, the pole sitter, from 1 down to 25. So it's going to be a tough second race for Mark Skaife, but I still suspect he'll get through.